Hello and welcome everybody. In this video we will begin discussing and analyzing my favorite film of the franchise, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. War! The Republic is crumbling under attacks by the ruthless Sith Lord Count Dooku. There are heroes on both sides. Evil is everywhere. In a stunning move, the fiendish droid leader, General Grievous, has swept into the Republic capital and kidnapped Chancellor Palpatine, leader of the Galactic Senate. As the separatist droid army attempts to flee the besieged capital with their valuable hostage, two Jedi Knights lead a desperate mission to rescue the captive Chancellor. Looking at the crawl, we can highlight the two sentences. There are heroes on both sides, and evil is everywhere. What this means is simply that both sides believe they are fighting for what's right, as the CIS believe they are fighting to be free from government rule of the Republic, while the Republic believes they are fighting to keep the galaxy intact and ultimately secure peace and democracy. However, evil is everywhere is stating how this war is a tool for the dark side to take over, as many planets have suffered many casualties as that is the consequence of war. We are introduced to a new character right away in General Grievous, and learn that he has kidnapped the Chancellor, but two Jedi Knights are on their way to the rescue. This opening shot is pretty badass as you see the camera tilt down onto a ship and you get a good sense of the scale as you follow along with the Jedi starfighters, and you think you've seen the big reveal. But the reveal doesn't happen until the starfighters roll off the ship and you get immersed into this huge space battle. I mean, it is such an impressive shot and it really is so well executed. I mean, it's just so good. There really isn't much else I can say. This whole opening battle is really amazing and it has a lot to do with the creative mind of George Lucas. Like, a lot of the massive ships fire laser cannons, kind of like the Navy ships we see in our military, which makes sense because a lot of the battle scenes and battleship designs in Star Wars are influenced by 1940s war films. I really like how our first character that gets a close-up is R2, just like how it was in the opening to Attack of the Clones. R2 is ultimately the storyteller of the whole saga. We see Anakin, as you can tell he's a little older and has a scar on his right eye. Our left, his right. Which lets us know that he's been in action during the Clone Wars and has some battle scars. He points out to Obi-Wan that Grievous's ship is directly ahead, the one crawling with vulture droids. Obi-Wan responds sarcastically, "Oh, I see it. Oh, this is going to be easy." And we get a look at the vulture droids. The vulture droid carried 4 blaster cannons and 2 energy torpedo launchers and could reach 1200 kilometers per hour in a planet's atmosphere. When not in flight, the ship could transform into a walking weapons platform, used for ground patrol and troop support. Obi-Wan tells one of the clones to form his squad up behind him. He listens and tells his squad to set S-foils in attack position. This ship is called an Aggressive Reconnaissance 170 Starfighter, ARC 170 Starfighter, which was used by the Republic Navy throughout the Clone Wars. The ARC 170 was an ancestor of the T-65 X-Wing Starfighter, which would be used by the Alliance. The clone mentioned the S-foils on the ship, which are the movable wings attached to the port and starboard sides of the starship, sometimes mounted with weaponry. Normally, the foils were locked in a closed position close to the ship for landing and usually for normal flight, but during high-stress situations, the foils were folded out. We see the ARC 170 starfighters follow behind Anakin and Obi-Wan's starfighters, and we also see their ship's panels open and resemble Vader's TIE fighter. Anakin says, "This is where the fun begins," and we see the ships shoot at each other. One clone gets targeted by multiple vulture droids and panics. Anakin hears this and is anxious to want to help them, but Obi-Wan tells him, "No, they are doing their job so we can do ours." This part shows us the good in Anakin, and that he has the selfless desire to want to help others. But deep down, it's more so about him wanting to show off his ability and power to try and control and save the things he wants around him, instead of just letting go and focusing on the main goal. It's very subtle here, and it's a theme that plays throughout the whole film, and you'll see it more and more as the film progresses. The clone, unfortunately, gets destroyed, and it's one of those things where if Anakin had gone to help the clone out, he probably would have been able to save him, but that would have left Obi-Wan in a vulnerable spot, and not just that, he could have gotten himself killed. So for Anakin, it's about him learning to accept the fact that some things are just out of his control and that it's ultimately about accomplishing the main objective, which is to rescue the Chancellor. Anakin notices the missiles being fired at them and tells Obi-Wan to pull up. Obi-Wan states, "They overshot us," but Anakin sees that the missiles are coming around, tracking their ships. Anakin is able to easily destroy the missiles using his spinning trick. However, Obi-Wan seems to struggle a little bit. The missiles go past Obi-Wan and we see them explode, but a bunch of little droids called buzz droids start to latch onto Obi-Wan's starfighter. Obi-Wan notifies Anakin, and Anakin sees them as they start to rip apart Obi-Wan's ship, and unfortunately R4. Anakin tries to get a clear shot at the buzz droids, but Obi-Wan tries to tell Anakin to focus on the mission, but Anakin ignores him and fires at the buzz droids and knocks out one of Obi-Wan's starfighter wings. Obi-Wan tells Anakin,
"Hold your fire, you're not helping here!"
I agree, bad idea.
The buzz droids keep ripping apart Obi-Wan's ship and cause his cockpit to get foggy. Anakin moves his ship to the left of Obi-Wan and starts to bump into Obi-Wan to try and crush the droids. Obi-Wan says,
"Get out of here! There's nothing more you can do!"
I'm not leaving without you, Master.
Anakin is able to crush some of the droids. However, one climbs onto Anakin's ship and faces off against R2.
Get him, R2.
R2, hit the buzz droid, center eye!
Anakin points out that the command ship is dead ahead. Obi-Wan says alarmingly, "Well, have you noticed the shields are still up?" Anakin says, "Sorry, Master," and moves over to shoot the shield generator, but there are emergency doors that seem to slide out, and Obi-Wan says,
"Oh, I have a bad feeling about this."
They nearly enter inside the command ship, and we see Obi-Wan leap into the air as he ignites his lightsaber and destroys multiple droids in the process. We see Anakin's ship chop some droids. R2 lifts out of the ship, and then we see Anakin get out and destroy some droids. We see a shot of both Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting alongside each other like brothers. As they destroy the battle droids, Obi-Wan tells R2 to locate the Chancellor. Once they've finished fighting, they walk over towards R2, and R2 shows them the map of where the Chancellor is. Anakin states that he senses Count Dooku. Obi-Wan adds, "I sense a trap." Then Anakin goes,
Next move? Spring the trap.
Here, we see Obi-Wan and Anakin being best friends as they joke around a little during their mission. It gives us a good sense of what their relationship is like now, as opposed to where their relationship was in Attack of the Clones, as Anakin was a bit more of an angsty, arrogant teenager, and now we see him mature a little bit and enjoy himself around Obi-Wan. I really like that development, as it shows Anakin is not just this boring, stagnant character. R2 beeps to try and get Anakin's attention, but Anakin tells him to stay with the ship, and Obi-Wan gives R2 a comm link and tells him to wait for orders. Then we cut to a visual introduction to General Grievous. Some interesting facts about Grievous are that one of the early concepts for Grievous was a small child sitting on a floating chair, guarded by two IG-88 droids from Empire Strikes Back. George Lucas rejected this look as a child would not be taken seriously as the deadliest hand-to-hand fighter the galaxy has seen, which is how he wanted Grievous to be portrayed. Another early concept design featured Grievous as a disembodied alien head trailing a number of prehensile tentacles. His finalized face was inspired by the shape of a bathroom detergent spray nozzle by concept artist Warren Fu, which led to him creating the menacing cyborg. Grievous's first appearance was not in Revenge of the Sith, but in Chapter 20 of the Star Wars Clone Wars series. It was revealed in that episode that an unknown foe had been killing Jedi since the beginning of the war, and the Jedi were at a loss as to who was responsible. His backstory was later expanded through novels, comics, and the short stories like The Story of General Grievous, Lord of War, and Unknown Soldier by Abel G. Pena. Another fun fact about Grievous is his cough. During the production of Revenge of the Sith, George Lucas came into work one day with a cough and decided that it would be amusing to record it and use it on the new Episode 3 villain. Moving on, Grievous walks over to the captain of the ship and asks about the situation. And we see the captain as he is a Neimoidian named Lushrose Dauphine, and he says to Grievous, "2 Jedi landed in the main hangar bay. We're tracking them," and we see a visual display of the Jedi running across the hallway. Grievous states, just as Count Dooku predicted. showing that this was to be expected, hinting that this is meant to be laid out as a trap for the Jedi. We cut to the Jedi and Anakin notices the droidicas rolling towards them, and they ignite their lightsabers and deflect the laser bolts while entering inside the elevator. But they are met with a group of battle droids right behind them. No big deal, really. We see R2 hiding from the super battle droids as they walk inside the hangar and notice the Jedi starfighters. The elevator has stopped and the Jedi are stuck. Anakin tries to improvise and cuts a hole in the ceiling. Obi-Wan tries to contact R2 to see if he can activate the elevator, but it seems his comlink echoes across the area and the super battle droids are able to hear it faintly. R2 tries to back up and puts it inside his pocket to try and quiet the noise. One of the droids tells the other to ignore it and focus on his job. Anakin finishes cutting up the hole and leaps up on top of the elevator, and Obi-Wan comments,
Always on the move.
R2 is able to get to the control panel and activate the elevator, but the elevator goes down, and as it goes down, Anakin jumps up and grabs onto a doorway's ledge. Obi-Wan speaks into the comlink to tell R2 that they need to be going up, not down. The door opens and the droids lean over and point their blasters at Anakin, basically trying to arrest him. We then see Obi-Wan try to communicate with R2, but the comlink becomes really loud again, and the super battle droids notice it. However, R2 is able to have the elevator go up before they pick him up and taunt him. Anakin notices the elevator going up and decides to flip back onto a wall and onto the elevator and then inside with Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan ignites his lightsaber but quickly realizes it's Anakin. R2 shoots oil right at the droids to the point where there's a small puddle, and we get a fun banter between Anakin and Obi-Wan.
What was that all about?
Well, R2 has been...
No loose wire jokes.
Did I say anything?
He's trying.
I didn't say anything.
I love that scene. That scene always makes me laugh. We see R2 finish off the droids as he lights them up on fire and just casually drifts away. We cut to the elevator door opening and see the Jedi exit onto the observation pavilion. And I love how you can see the battle taking place in the background. The Jedi then walk up to Palpatine and asks if he's alright, but Palpatine points out Dooku walking in. Then Obi-Wan tells Anakin,
This time we will do it together.
I was about to say that.
Dooku jumps off the second level and draws his lightsaber. Palpatine then says,
Get help, you're no match for him. He's a Sith Lord.
Chancellor Palpatine, Sith Lords are our speciality.
They drop their robes as they prepare to fight, then walk up to Dooku and ignite their lightsabers, and they fight. Dooku lets them know that he's been looking forward to their rematch, and we see Anakin respond to Dooku saying that his powers have doubled since the last time they fought. Then Dooku states,
Good. Twice the pride, double the fall.
This line is an obvious foreshadow to what is to come of Anakin towards the end of the movie. The Jedi and Dooku keep fighting. We see Dooku being able to best Obi-Wan in the duel. Anakin and Dooku keep fighting as they walk up the stairs. Obi-Wan is able to get up and easily take out the super battle droids. Palpatine cheers them on, and we see Obi-Wan and Anakin clash with Dooku. But Dooku is able to use the Force to lift Obi-Wan by the throat and kicks Anakin and throws Obi-Wan across the room and uses the Force to break a section of the platform to trap Obi-Wan. Anakin charges at Dooku and kicks him over the railing and jumps down to continue fighting. Their sabers clash and Dooku begins to speak.
Sense great fear in you, Skywalker. You have hate. You have anger. But you don't use them. As Anakin crosses the lightsabers, Palpatine starts to cheer and praise Anakin and tells him to kill Dooku. Dooku looks at him in confusion, then looks back at Anakin. Anakin is very conflicted. He doesn't really know if he should take him as prisoner or kill him. But Palpatine pressures him and gives the order, and ultimately Anakin complies and chops his head off. Anakin still stands there wondering if he did the right thing, but Palpatine tries to assure him that he did the right thing and that it was justified since he was too dangerous to be kept alive. Anakin points out, however, that he was an unarmed prisoner, but Palpatine then states,
It is only natural. He cut off your arm, and you wanted revenge.
Palpatine uses revenge as a justification for Anakin. This is Palpatine planting more seeds into Anakin's head, having him think that revenge is okay. But Jedi are taught that revenge is a dark side attribute. The Jedi are not about that life. So this gives us a clue that Palpatine seems to be more keen towards the dark side, more than he is towards the light. He also reminds Anakin about the Sand People, and we hear the sounds of their chants.
Remember what you told me about your mother and the Sand People?
This again furthering the notion that revenge is justified. Also, this lets us infer that they have a strong relationship with one another, and Anakin feels comfortable telling Palpatine personal things, and Palpatine is able to take advantage of that. They start to leave the room, but Anakin runs towards Obi-Wan to see if he's okay. This is where Anakin's attachment starts to do him good and makes him do selfless acts. So with Anakin, it's not really attachment that's the problem. It's more so that he overdoes it to the point where he tries to possess things and control things. With Luke, he's attached to his friends, but he's able to let go and accept fate. He's able to not let strong emotions consume him. Unfortunately for Anakin, it's a different story. They notice the elevator isn't working, and Anakin tries to contact R2 to activate it. We see shots of the space battle, and we see the invisible hand be impacted by a Republic laser cannon. The captain tells the droids to reverse stabilizers, and Grievous tells them to fire the emergency booster engines. And we see the ship start to level out, which then leads to Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Palpatine sliding down. But Anakin is able to grab and hang on to a cable. Obi-Wan wakes up, and they see the elevator accelerating down towards them. Anakin tries to have R2 shut down the elevator, but Obi-Wan says it's too late, and they jump and slide down. As they slide down, the Jedi take out grappling hooks and throw it towards a beam and swing through the open door while the Chancellor holds on to Anakin's leg. As they get up, Obi-Wan gives the idea of going to the hangar bay to find something that's flyable so that they can get out of there. Anakin tries to have R2 meet with them. We cut to a droid telling the general that they've located the Jedi, and Grievous tells them to activate the ray shields. Then we see the Jedi get trapped by the ray shields. Anakin tries to tell them to be patient for R2 to come and release the ray shields. Then we see R2 slide across the room, squealing, and Anakin looks at Obi-Wan saying,
See? No problem.
Do you have a plan B?
The droids escort the prisoners to the bridge and meet General Grievous, and one of the droids hands the Jedi's lightsabers to him. Grievous starts to ridicule the Jedi, calling Obi-Wan the negotiator, sarcastically, and then tells Anakin,
I was expecting someone with your reputation to be a little older.
General Grievous, you're shorter than I expected.
Jedi scum! Your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection.
But Obi-Wan tells him, not this time, and this time you won't escape. R2 starts to cause a distraction, so the Jedi can grab their lightsabers. Grievous tells his bodyguard droids, called Magna Guards, to attack the Jedi. These droids had internal systems furnished with advanced combat learning programs, which, compared to most of the droids utilized by the CIS, allowed the Magna Guards to adapt a highly diverse variety of tasks. These tasks ranged from melee and ranged combat to starfighter control. The faces of the Magna Guards featured 2 red or yellow photoreceptor eyes, which were complemented by a backup system mounted on the chest. The droid's weapon of choice was the lightsaber-resistant electro staff, and they wore cloaks and wore head wraps. They begin to fight.
You lose, General Kenobi.
We see General Grievous on top of the ship and slips inside the room, full of escape pods. The Jedi finish off the droids piloting the ship. We see the ship start to break apart and see Grievous release all the escape pods. Anakin alerts this to both Obi-Wan and Palpatine and comes to the conclusion that they have to land the ship into Coruscant. As they enter the atmosphere, we see the ship fully split in half, and Anakin and Obi-Wan say,
"We lost something."
Not to worry, we are still flying half a ship.
Now the tension starts to build as they pick up speed into Coruscant. We see ships following the invisible hand called emergency fire speeders and douse the cruiser. They see the landing strip ahead, but land roughly and destroy a control tower. An interesting fact about this particular sequence is that George did a particular shot to impress Steven Spielberg. Take a look.
Concept shot, homage to Steve Spielberg, because he loves shots like this.
We transition to a taxi flying across Coruscant, and you'll notice a ship right at the bottom that looks like the Millennium Falcon, but it isn't. It's most likely just another Corellian ship, but either way, I think the Lucas team just had it there as a fun little Easter egg. We see Palpatine, Anakin, and R2 depart the ship. However, Obi-Wan stays as Anakin asks if he's coming. Obi-Wan replies saying that he's not brave enough for politics and needs to report to the council, and says, besides, someone needs to become the poster boy. Anakin says humbly, hold on, this whole operation was your idea. Obi-Wan goes on to list the amazing things Anakin did during the battle. Anakin then replies, trying to be as modest as possible, all because of your training. Obi-Wan tells Anakin proudly and gleefully that he was the hero and deserves a glorious day with the politicians. Anakin concedes and says, but you owe me one, and not for saving your skin for the 10th time. Obi-Wan corrects Anakin saying 9th time. That business on Cato Nemoidia doesn't count. I'll see you at the briefing. You can see this event take place in the novel Labyrinth of Evil, which is a direct prequel to the film. Mace Windu awaits Chancellor Palpatine and asks if he's doing alright. Palpatine replies yes, and gives credit to Obi-Wan and Anakin and reports that Grievous has escaped, and notes that with Count Dooku dead, he is now in charge of the droid army, and assures him that the Senate will vote to continue the war as long as Grievous is alive. Mace Windu reacts to this news by telling Palpatine that the Jedi will make finding Grievous their highest priority, and gestures to Palpatine to walk ahead across the hallway. Everyone follows, and we see Bail Organa give praise to Anakin. C-3PO and R2 have a little conversation with one another. As they continue talking, Anakin notices Padme hiding behind a pillar and ends the conversation abruptly to go run towards Padme and picks her up and hugs her as he's so excited to see her. Padme tells him worryingly that there were whispers that he's been killed, but Anakin tells her that he's okay and says,
"Feels like we've been apart for a lifetime. And it might have been if the Chancellor hadn't been kidnapped. I don't think they would have ever brought us back from the Outer Rim sieges." This
lets the audience know that they've been apart for a very long time, as Anakin's been out doing his Jedi duties and fighting in the Clone Wars. Anakin notices Padme trembling and asks what's going on, and Padme says,
"Something wonderful has happened. Annie, I'm pregnant."
Anakin is shocked by this news and becomes a little speechless and ultimately says, "That's wonderful," with a big grin on his face. Padme, however, is worried about the matter. He tells her, "We're not going to worry about anything right now, alright? This is a happy moment, the happiest moment of my life." And they kiss and hug. I want to make a side note about this scene, as for those of you who've seen Clone Wars Season 7, you notice Padme has a little belly bump, and in the scene, Anakin tells her about the missions on the Outer Rim sieges and how long it has been taking. This shows that Filoni doesn't care about canon, nor pays enough attention. Like, it is right here where Anakin finds out that she's pregnant, obviously, and for them to complain about the time they've been apart dilutes this moment. You can argue that's me being real nitpicky about that little part, but that doesn't mean that it's not a valid criticism. But the main one is the fact that Padme has a belly bump. Like, this makes no sense, and it shows how lazy of a writer Dave Filoni is. When you make simple errors like that, it affects the whole story and turns it into a discombobulated mess. Consistency is important because it allows your audience to take you seriously. When you are consistently inconsistent, your audience is going to be thrown off and they're not going to take your story seriously. And that's the problem with Filoni and really all of the writers at Disney. We transition to a separatist shuttle flying into Utapau, and we see that it is being controlled by the Federation in this sinkhole area. We see Grievous exiting the ship and see other separatist leaders standing right by his shuttle. Shumai, Sandhill, Wat Tambor, Pago the Lesser, Teeks, part of the Quarren species and senator of the Mon Calamari star system, and Newt Gunray. Grievous contacts Sidious, and Sidious orders him to move the separatist leaders to Mustafar, and adds that the end of the war is near. But Grievous points out the loss of Count Dooku. Sidious then replies,
"His death was a necessary loss. Soon I will have a new apprentice, one far younger and more powerful."
This transition to the next scene is probably one of my favorite transitions in the whole movie, as it just does a good job of showing how beautiful Coruscant is, and also the music is just so pleasant to the ears. Take a look. We see Anakin looking at Padme full of love and admiration of her beauty. Padme begins to romanticize their future and talks about how she would love to go back to Naboo and raise their child there, right by the gardens on the lake country where it's safe. Anakin just kind of ignores her and tells her how beautiful she is. Then Padme says, "It's only because I'm so in love." And they have flirtatious banter as Anakin says, "No, it's because I'm so in love with you." Padme responds sarcastically, "So love has blinded you?" Anakin chuckles and says, "Well, that's not exactly what I meant." Then Padme says with a smile, "But it's probably true." Some people don't really like this scene. Me, I didn't get bothered by it. I just took it as, oh, they're madly in love with each other. Like, it wasn't something I took all that seriously. However, what this scene is saying is when Anakin says, "No, because I'm so in love with you," Padme takes it as, "Oh, so you only find me beautiful because you're in love with me?" And Anakin is like, "No, that's not what I meant." Then Padme smiles and says, "It's probably true though." Again, they're just being playful and joking with one another, and she knows how in love Anakin is with her, so she just makes a little joke about that. Ironically, that line about love is blind becomes true for Anakin as we start to see that juxtaposition play out in the next scene as we see Anakin have a nightmare about Padme. I love this shot right here. It's a really gorgeous looking shot. I mean, the lighting is perfect. You get a beautiful view of Coruscant at night. I mean, it's just a perfect cinematic shot. Padme walks up to Anakin and asks what's bothering him. Anakin tries to ignore it and change the subject by commenting on that Japor snippet he gave her when he was a kid. But Padme knows Anakin is not telling her what's really going on with him. Then Anakin tells her that he dreamt of her, but Padme tries to get more details, and you can tell it bothered Anakin a lot as he stood up and walked away. Padme still stands there compassionately waiting to see his response. Then Anakin tells her that she dies in childbirth, and Padme wonders if the baby died as well. Anakin states, "I don't know." Padme then reassures Anakin that it was only a dream, but Anakin says, "I won't let this one become real." Since his dream came true of his mother dying, he believes it will become true for Padme. So his deep love for Padme has now blinded him of the other possible outcomes, as well as many other things that we will see play out throughout the film, and is on a mission to save her from dying, as he believes that if he doesn't do anything, her death will be inevitable. Padme responds by saying how the baby will change their lives, and then starts listing the issues they'll face, which are Padme discontinuing her term as senator and Anakin being expelled from the Jedi Order. She then asks if Obi-Wan could help. Anakin then states, "We don't need his help. Our baby is a blessing." And they hug. Again, we see this sort of continuous theme of control with Anakin. If he was truly compassionate and concerned for the well-being of Padme and himself, he would ask for Obi-Wan's help, instead of holding on to his ego and thinking he can solve the problem himself. With Anakin, you have to think, is it really about compassionate love, or is it a possessive love? We transition to the Jedi Temple, where we see Anakin talking with Grand Master Yoda. Yoda asks him about the visions he's seeing. Anakin responds,
"They're of pain, suffering, death."
Yoda asks if it's about himself or someone else, and if they're close to him. Anakin replies, yes. And Yoda responds saying that he must be careful when sensing the future and that the fear of loss is a path to the dark side. Anakin states that he won't let these visions come true, but Yoda says that
death is a natural part of life. Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force. Mourn them, do not. Miss them, do not. Attachment leads to jealousy. The shadow of greed, that is.
Right here, Yoda is spelling out the whole theme of the movie in that being extremely attached to someone is really a form of greed. Because you want that person around you all the time and you never want to let them go. Because deep down there's this selfish desire to have them with you and around you. He then adds, after Anakin asks, what must I do, Master Yoda? That Anakin must let go of everything he fears to lose. And that's really the case for attachment. If you really want to be selfless, you really have to learn to just let go, accept, and understand that not everything is in your control. And you're going to have to let fate take its place. We'll talk more about this as the film goes on, because I do believe some people misunderstand it a little in a way that's taken too literally. We then transition to Anakin meeting with Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan tells him that he's missed the report on the Outer Rim sieges. Anakin apologizes. Obi-Wan tells him that Seleucamai has fallen and Master Voss has moved his troops to Baz Peti. And Master Voss is Quinlan Voss, who actually first appeared in The Phantom Menace, and you see more of him in the Star Wars Republic comics. Anakin senses that there's something wrong and asks about it. Obi-Wan says that the Senate is expected to vote more executive powers to the Chancellor. Anakin believes that this is very reasonable and states that it only means less deliberating and more action, and that it'll make it easier to end the war. Obi-Wan is concerned about Anakin's praise of Palpatine and tells him to be careful. Anakin asks, be careful of what? Obi-Wan replies that the Chancellor has requested his presence. Anakin asks, what for? Obi-Wan says he would not say. Anakin finds it to be unusual, especially since he didn't inform the Council. Obi-Wan adds, all of this is unusual, and it's making me feel uneasy. What's Palpatine doing to cause this uneasiness? We transition to Palpatine's office and see Anakin and Palpatine walking around the room. Palpatine begins to speak.
I hope you trust me, Anakin.
Of course.
I need your help, son.
What do you mean?
They then continue walking and Palpatine appoints him to be his personal representative on the Jedi Council. Anakin is shocked by this statement. Keep in mind, Anakin is not on the Jedi Council. He's not even a Jedi Master. He's only a Jedi Knight. Anakin walks up to him and says the Council elects its own members. They'll never accept this. But Palpatine responds,
I think they will. They need you. More than you know.
We then cut to Anakin reporting what transpired between him and Palpatine to the Council. Yoda and the Council don't like that this appointment has taken place. Anakin acknowledges. Mace Windu then says,
You are on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of Master.
What?
As you see, Anakin is frustrated about the fact that he's not a master. The point of this scene is showing that it's more about power for Anakin. Yes, he wants to save Padme, but he wants to do it through his own power. Anakin then bows down and says, Forgive me, Master. Obi-Wan shakes his head in disappointment. Ki-Adi-Mundi begins to speak about the search for General Grievous. Yoda gives the idea that Grievous is hiding in the Outer Rim and that he must survey the outlying systems. Obi-Wan points out that they do not have many ships to spare. Ki-Adi-Mundi also asks,
What about the droid attack on the Wookiees?
Mace Windu answers that they will send an attack group there immediately. Obi-Wan adds that it's a system they can't afford to lose. Yoda then states,
Go, I will. Good relations with the Wookiees I have.
We then see Anakin speak frustratingly to Obi-Wan about not being a master and how insulted he feels. Obi-Wan tells him to calm down and that he's been given a great honor and that to be on the council at his age has never happened before, which shows how impatient Anakin is. All his life, he's been hearing about the fact that he is the chosen one and that he is the most gifted Force user ever, but that has gone to his head, and he's anxious and impatient to reach his full potential. That's where the greed comes from with Anakin, that desire to reach his full potential. Obi-Wan worries that he's become too close to the Chancellor, and that the Council doesn't like it when he interferes in Jedi affairs. Anakin says that he didn't ask to be put on the Council, but Obi-Wan points out that it's what he wanted though, and continues to point out that his friendship with Palpatine is what got him appointed, and that the only reason the Council approved his appointment is because the Chancellor trusts him. Anakin asks, and? Before Obi-Wan gives an honest reply, he tells him that he's on his side on the matter and doesn't want to put him in this situation. But Anakin aggressively and impatiently asks, what situation? Then Obi-Wan says that the Council wants him to report on all the Chancellor's dealings. Then Anakin goes, they want me to spy on the Chancellor? But that's treason, Obi-Wan points out and says, we are at war, Anakin. Anakin then asks, why didn't the Council give me this assignment when we were in session? Obi-Wan tells him that the assignment is not to be on record. Anakin begins to defend the Chancellor, saying that he's not a bad man and that he's watched out for him ever since he arrived on Coruscant. In other words, manipulating and grooming him. Obi-Wan says that is why you must help us, and that their allegiance is to the Senate, not to its leader, and points out that he managed to stay in office long after his term has expired. But Anakin notes that the Senate demanded that he stay longer. Obi-Wan then says, yes, but use your feelings, Anakin. Something is out of place. Anakin sighs and says, you're asking me to do something against the Jedi Code, against the Republic, against a mentor and a friend. That's what's out of place here. Why are you asking this of me? Then Obi-Wan says,
the Council is asking you.
Anakin feels like he's being treacherous towards Palpatine, but he understands that he is a Jedi and he must accept his role and respect what's being asked of him by the Council. We transition to Obi-Wan, Windu, and Yoda riding on a gunship discussing what took place with Anakin, as he did not like the idea of his new assignment. Windu believes putting Anakin and Palpatine together is dangerous, and as Windu says that, Yoda brushes his head like the old samurai in Seven Samurai. Windu adds that he doesn't trust Anakin. Obi-Wan says, with all due respect, Master, is he not the chosen one? Is he not to destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force? Yoda speculates that the prophecy could have been misread. Obi-Wan tries to defend Anakin, saying,
he will not let me down. He never has.
We get a nice view of the Republic base as you see Yoda and the clones prep for Kashyyyk. We cut to Anakin speaking out his frustrations with the Jedi Order to Padme, noting how he believes the war is destroying the principles of the Republic. Padme starts to ponder if they may be fighting on the wrong side. Anakin becomes suspicious of this question, saying,
what do you mean?
Padme then says, what if the democracy we thought we were serving no longer exists, and the Republic has become the very evil we've been fighting to destroy? Anakin responds,
I don't believe that. And you're sounding like a separatist.
Padme then says that the war represents a failure to listen and asks him to ask the Chancellor to stop the fighting and let diplomacy resume. This is where we start to see our characters, other than Anakin, start to put the puzzle together. They are now more skeptical than ever. The Jedi are seeing it, and Padme as well. Padme is pointing out the fact that this war really hasn't solved anything, and that maybe Palpatine has something to do with it. Anakin gets upset and sternly says,
don't ask me to do that. Make a motion in the Senate where that kind of a request belongs.
This whole scene is really meant to establish that the pressure that Anakin is under is beginning to divide the two lovers. Padme has these values of democracy and how things should be that Anakin is starting to be confused about. Anakin's loyalty is with the Chancellor, not the Senate, nor really democracy. And for her to challenge what Palpatine is doing upsets him quite a bit because it's attacking his friend and his mentor, and he's getting in a state of confusion because of the pressures being put on him from various people. We transition to Anakin rushing over to meet with Palpatine at the opera. In this shot, you can see George Lucas and his daughter Kate talking with each other. The characters they play are named Baron Nutlewisky Papanoida and Chi Ikwe Papanoida, and they are part of the species called Pantoran. Once Anakin enters inside the private box, he walks towards Palpatine, and Palpatine reports that the clone intelligence units have discovered that Grievous is hiding in the Utapau system. Anakin is happy about this news, as he believes once Grievous is captured, the war will end. Palpatine enters into his bag of manipulative tricks as he says,
I would worry about the collective wisdom of the Council if they didn't select you for this assignment. You're the best choice.
by far.
Palpatine gives Anakin all these types of praise and compliments to try and lure Anakin into thinking he deserves better and believe he is the best out of everybody, which will lead to Anakin becoming more arrogant and greedy for more power, which will lead to more distrust and frustration with the Jedi Order because they are not giving him what he wants or what he believes he deserves. Palpatine tells everybody to leave and has Anakin sit down right next to him. Palpatine continues talking to Anakin and says,
Anakin, you know I'm not able to rely on the Jedi Council. If they haven't included you in their plot, they soon will.
Anakin is confused. Palpatine continues, you must sense what I have come to suspect. The Jedi Council want control of the Republic. They're planning to betray me. Anakin tries to de-escalate the issue, but Palpatine interrupts him, saying, Anakin, search your feelings. And Anakin is forced to admit that the Council doesn't trust him. Palpatine adds, or the Senate, or the Republic, or democracy for that matter. Anakin mentions how his trust in the Council has been shaken. This makes Palpatine very curious, and what Palpatine does here is amazingly cunning.
They asked you to do something that made you feel dishonest, didn't they? They asked you to spy on me, didn't they?
Palpatine is playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. He knew exactly what role was given to Anakin, and you were able to see how uncomfortable it made Anakin feel. This creates more confusion for Anakin as he doesn't know whether or not to trust Palpatine or the Jedi. Palpatine continues, remember back to your early teachings. All who gain power are afraid to lose it, even the Jedi. This has the audience infer that Palpatine oversaw some of Anakin's training and may have some knowledge of what the Jedi were teaching him. Anakin responds to Palpatine saying, the Jedi use their power for good, and Palpatine responds,
Good is a point of view, Anakin. The Sith and the Jedi are similar in almost every way, including their quest for greater power.
Anakin refutes the Sith rely on their passion for their strength. They think inwards, only about themselves. Then Palpatine says, questioningly, and the Jedi don't? And Anakin replies, the Jedi are selfless, they only care about others. And Anakin here is absolutely right on this matter. And to go a step further, the Jedi are protectors of the common good and defend the innocent. If I were to define the Jedi to someone who has never seen Star Wars in the simplest way, I will say they are superhero monks. However, Palpatine right here is going to try to convince Anakin that the Sith can use their power for others by telling him the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Darth Plagueis was a dark lord of the Sith, so powerful and so wise, he could use the Force to influence the midi-chlorians to create life. He could even keep the ones he cared about from dying.
Anakin is stunned by this knowledge of power and asks more about him. Palpatine says, he became so powerful. The only thing he was afraid of was losing his power, which eventually, of course, he did. Unfortunately, he taught his apprentice everything he knew. Then his apprentice killed him in his sleep. It's ironic. He could save others from death, but not himself. Anakin asks, is it possible to learn this power? And Palpatine turns to him and says,
Not from a Jedi.
Palpatine is taking advantage of Anakin's confusion and shaky trust with the Jedi, as he uses this story to try and manipulate Anakin into thinking that this dark side power could help him save Padme. He doesn't believe Palpatine is Sidious because he believes he's just telling him a story. But Palpatine masterfully has groomed Anakin into thinking of him as a compassionate friend and mentor, to the point where that idea of him being the Dark Lord of the Sith would be on the back of his mind. And that is it for part 1 of Revenge of the Sith. Stay tuned for part 2. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And may the Force be with you.
Ooh.